Okay, our story of the week is called The Great Kapok Tree, a tale of the Amazon rainforest by Lynn Cherry. Okay, before we start reading though, I want you to look closely at this cover. Let me zoom in a little bit. What animals do you guys see? What do you see, Kelsey?
I see an anteater, a bird.
Anteater, bird. That's probably a tapir. Okay, what else do we see, Evangeline?
Butterflies.
Butterflies. Say that again.
Snake.
Snake. Jalen?
Parrot.
Parrots. Good. What's this one called? Black and...
Flamingo.
No. Toucan. Let's see what's up here at the top. We see like a boa constrictor down here at the bottom. What is this little thing called? It kind of looks like a porcupine or a possum. What is this?
Frog.
Frog. Okay. So now, what information do you already know about rainforest? Is there anything you already know about a rainforest, Jalen?
That lions live there. Wait, no. Wait.
Not really lions. That's the African safari.
Wait, hold on. What is African safari?
Think about the name.
It rains there.
It rains there, okay? So that's why it's so green. They have all these lush plants and trees because it usually will get a lot of rain in the rainforest. Do you know where they're located? Is there any rainforest in the United States?
Yeah.
No, not in the United States, okay? They are tropical, right? So they have tropical weather, which means it's kind of mostly warm. On the cover, you see a man, right? What do you think he's contemplating doing? But just by looking at him. Jalen, thank you for raising your hand.
He's looking at the animals.
Okay, he's looking at the animals, but what could he be contemplating? Javea?
He might be trying to cut the tree down.
He might be trying to cut the tree down. What made you come to that conclusion?
Because he has, I don't know what they're called, but he has something. An axe in his hand.
He has an axe in his hand. Good. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and start reading the story. As you listen to the story, I want you guys to think about the words you hear and be looking at your vocabulary list. So when you hear one of your vocabulary words, maybe you can put a little dot next to it on your sheet so it can kind of give you a mental picture of what that word might mean as we read. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read this part too. It says, The Great Kapok Tree, A Tale of the Amazon Rainforest by Lynn Cherry. In the dense green Amazon rainforest, a man is chopping down a great kapok tree. The animals who live among its leaves and branches watch him silently. Hot and weary, the man lies down to rest at the foot of the tree and falls asleep. Then, one by one, the forest creatures emerge to whisper in his ear. They beg him not to destroy their home and tell him how important every tree is in the rainforest. An anteater reminds the man, what happens tomorrow depends on what you do today. Finally, a Yanomamo, child of the rainforest, pleads, when you awake, please look upon us all with new eyes. The man wakes up with a start. All around him are monkeys, tree porcupines, frogs, bees, butterflies, anteaters, birds of many colors, a jaguar, and a three-toed sloth. Their whispers echo in his ears. The man and the creature stare silently at one another. And then he makes his decision. With her lush paintings of the Amazon rainforest, Lynn Cherry has created a magical tale with a conservation message that speaks to both children and adults. Okay? So as you look at this map, you'll see some of the locations of rainforest. So we have South America, Africa, Asia, and down here on these islands. Okay? And then part of the map is covered up, but there might be more in the islands that we're not seeing. Okay? So you guys were good on getting your animals. Anteater. What else did y'all say that y'all were right on? Butterflies. Okay. In the Amazon rainforest, it is always hot, and in that heat, everything grows and grows and grows. The tops of the trees in the rainforest are called the canopy. The canopy is a sunny place that touches the sky. The animals that live there like lots of light. Colorful parrots fly from tree to tree. Monkeys leap from branch to branch. The bottom of the rainforest is called the understory. The animals that live in the understory like darkness. There, silent snakes curl around hanging vines. Graceful jaguars watch and wait. And in this steamy environment, the great kapok tree shoots up through the forest and emerges above the canopy. This is the story of a community of animals that live in one such tree in the rainforest. Two men walked into the rainforest. Moments before, the forest had been alive with the sounds of squawking birds and howling monkeys. Now, all was quiet as the creatures watched the two men and wondered why they had come. The larger man stopped and pointed to a great kapok tree. Then he left. The smaller man took the axe he carried and struck the trunk of the tree. Whack, whack, whack. The sounds of the blows rang through the forest. The wood of the tree was very hard. Chop, chop, chop. The man wiped off the sweat that ran down his face and neck. Whack, chop, whack, chop. Soon the man grew tired. He sat down to rest at the foot of the great kapok tree. Before he knew it, the heat and the hum of the forest had lulled him to sleep. A boa constrictor lived in the kapok tree. He slithered down its trunk to where the man was sleeping. He looked at the gash the axe had made in the tree. Then the huge snake slid very close to the man and hissed in his ear. Senhor, this tree is a tree of miracles. It is my home where generations of my ancestors have lived. Do not chop it down. A bee buzzed in the sleeping man's ear. Senhor, my hive is in this kapok tree, and I fly from tree to tree and flower to flower collecting pollen. In this way, I pollinate the trees and flowers throughout the rainforest. You see, all living things depend on one another. A troop of monkeys scampered down from the canopy of the kapok tree. They chattered to the sleeping man. Senhor, we have seen the ways of man. You chop down one tree, then come back for another and another. The roots of these great trees will wither and die, and there will be nothing left to hold the earth in place. When the heavy rains come, the soil will be washed away and the forest will become a desert. A toucan, a macaw, and a cock of the rock flew down from the canopy. Senhor, squawked the toucan, you must not cut down this tree. We have flown over the rainforest and seen what happens once you begin to chop down the trees. Many people settle on the land. They set fires to clear the underbrush, and soon the forest disappears. Where once there was life and beauty, only black and smoldering ruins remain. A bright and small tree frog crawled along the edge of a leaf. In a squeaky voice, he piped in the man's ear. Senhor, a ruined rainforest means ruined lives, many ruined lives. You will leave many of us homeless if you chop down this great kapok tree. A jaguar had been sleeping along a branch in the middle of the tree. Because his spotted coat blended into the dappled light and shadows in the understory, no one had noticed him. Now he leapt down and padded silently over to the sleeping man. He growled in his ear, Senhor, the kapok tree is home to many birds and animals. If you cut it down, where will I find my dinner? 4 tree porcupines swung down from branch to branch and whispered to the man, Senhor, do you know what we animals and humans need in order to live? Oxygen. And Senhor, do you know what trees produce? Oxygen. If you cut down the forest, you will destroy that which gives us all life. Several anteaters climbed down the kapok tree with their young clinging to their backs. The unstriped anteater said to the sleeping man, Senhor, you are chopping down this tree with no thought for the future. And surely you know that what happens tomorrow depends upon what you do today. The big man tells you to chop down a beautiful tree. He does not think of his own children, who tomorrow must live in a world without trees. A 3-toed sloth had begun climbing down from the canopy when the men first appeared. Only now did she reach the ground. Plodding ever so slowly over to the sleeping man, she spoke in her deep and lazy voice. Senhor, how much is beauty worth? Can you live without it? If you destroy the beauty of the rainforest, on what would you feast your eyes? Why did it take the sloth so long to get down?
Because it's slow.
They're slow.
That's why they called it a sloth.
A child from the Yanomamo tribe who lived in the rainforest knelt over the sleeping man. He murmured in his ear, Senhor, when you awake, please look upon us with all new eyes. Oh, please look upon us all with new eyes. The man awoke with a start. Before him stood the rainforest child, and all around him staring were the creatures who depended on the great kapok tree. What wondrous and rare animals they were. The man looked about and saw the sun streaming through the canopy. Spots of bright light glowed like jewels amidst the dark green forest. Strange and beautiful plants seemed to dangle in the air, suspended from the great kapok tree. The man smelled the fragrant perfume of their flowers. He felt the steamy mist rising from the forest floor, but he heard no sound, for the creatures were strangely silent. The man stood and picked up his axe. He swung back his arm as though to strike the tree. Suddenly, he stopped. He turned and looked at the animals and the child. He hesitated. Then he dropped the axe and walked out of the rainforest.
Take the axe with
Okay, here's a note from the author, Lynn Cherry. Dear readers, I wrote The Great Kapok Tree to let the world know what happens to the rainforest creatures and to the entire planet when rainforests are destroyed. I hope that after reading this book you will help save the rainforest. The Great Kapok Tree is about the Amazon rainforest, a tropical rainforest, but we have a temperate rainforest in the Pacific Northwest of the United States that we must protect too. Please care for Mother Earth. Together we can make a difference. Lynn Cherry. Okay, so here's another version of the map. You can see. Okay, so here's some in Central America that we weren't able to see before, and then the islands. These are the tropical rainforest of the world. Okay, did y'all like that story?
No.
What was the message? What was the theme of the story? Remember, we've talked about theme, and that's the central message or the lesson they're trying to teach you. What do you think the theme was? Evangeline?
Save the rainforest.
Saving the rainforest, cutting down the tree. Is that the message or the lesson you're trying to learn? To cut down the tree?
We're trying not to learn to cut down the tree.
Right. The message they're trying to teach you, or the lesson, is that rainforests and trees are important and we need to keep them alive and not cut them down. Okay? It kind of is trying to tell you, too, that everything is dependent on one another. Okay? You may think that the tree does not affect anything, but it affects a lot of animals and it affects people too. Okay? So what we're going to do now is get out our reading notebooks and we're going to glue this in on theme, which we've already talked about, but we're going to write the theme of this story. Since we've already talked about theme, this should be pretty easy, not too difficult. So we're going to glue this in. And out to the side, I want you to put the title of the story, The Great Kapok Tree, and write what you think the theme of the story was. So remember, theme means the central message, what the author wants you to learn from the story. The theme is what lingers in your heart and on your mind after the story is over. So after we read that whole story, what was on your heart and in your mind? To protect nature, right? To not cut trees down, okay? So that's what we're going to add to our... Okay, so there's theme, the central message, and who can tell me in their own words what they thought the theme of the story was? Kelsey?
I think the theme was about don't cut down trees because it will mess up animals' homes and stuff.
Okay. So trees are important to animals, and we shouldn't cut them down. Anything else? Oh, yes. Who else has something they want to share? In their own words, the theme of the story. Allie?
They should show respect for animals.
The basic central lesson they were trying to teach us was trees are important to animals and we shouldn't cut them down. Not just important to animals, but to nature. For us also, right?
Yeah, for oxygen.
Yes, for oxygen. Okay, now on a clean page, we're going to talk about sensory language. So your title is going to be Sensory Language. Okay? So sensory language are words or phrases that connect to the five senses. Okay, so we heard a lot of sensory language in this story. So an example could be a word with sound. Can you think back to the story of a word they said that made you hear it, or made you kind of get a sound in your mind of what that would sound like? Did they say the word whack and chop?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, Allie, you weren't here, so you're not going to know because you weren't here to listen to the story. Okay. Whack and chop were examples of sensory language because they were for the sense of sound. Okay. So we have 5 senses. We have touch, sound, sight, which is your eyes, smell, and taste. Okay, those are your 5 senses. So sensory language is going to connect to those 5 senses. Okay? Okay, so those words, sensory words or phrases are going to describe how something looks, feels, tastes, sounds, or smells. Okay, an example from the story was whack, chop. Which of the 5 senses did these connect to? Sight, sound, smell, taste, or touch? Evangeline? Sound. Once you have that copied down, we're going to look at these 5 senses. Okay? If you are done, we're going to go ahead and cut these like into flaps. And we're going to write underneath for each sense. Those of you at home won't have this foldable, so you will just copy them down in your notebook, continuing on this page. But the first one we're going to go over is sound. Okay? We've already done the words whack, chop. So let's come up with something else. So, squawking. Squawking, you can think of what? When you hear that word, it makes you think of what?
Sound.
A sound coming from what?
Duck.
A duck.
A goose.
A goose.
A bird.
A bird. So you kind of know what that sounds like in your head, right? By that word. So that's sensory language. Howling. When we hear that word, we know what that would sound like, and we get an image or a sound in our mind. We can hear it without having to actually hear it in the story. Okay? Quiet. Humming. Squeaky. Hissing. Chatter. These are all, I think all of these are coming from the story too. Growling. Which animal was growling? The jaguar. Okay. So those are examples for sound. We're going to leave this part blank. And at the end, you guys are going to go back and write a sentence. Okay? Let's go ahead and do the first one together. Okay? So I can use one of these words that we've written down to come up with a sentence that's using sensory language. So, does anybody have one that they think they would like to share? Chelsea?
My dog was howling when the moon set out.
Okay. My dog was howling when the moon Okay, what do you mean by sat out? Can we think of a different way to say that? My dog was howling when the moon came out? Good. So we use that word howling. Why do you think an author would want to use sensory language?
Because
When you hear those words, does it give you a better picture or give you a better way to relate to the story? Yes. It just is more descriptive, so it gives us a better understanding as we're reading. It makes the story more vivid to us. Okay? The next one is sight. Okay, the second one was sight. So for sight, can y'all think of anything they said in the story? They described the animals. What about the rainforest? What is a sensory word that you would see on the cover? Look at the cover of the book up there. How would you describe that rainforest? Yes.
it's like crowded. It's
Crowded, okay. I can picture that in my mind, right? Is it colorful? So these are words that are describing how things look, because, did we say? Yes, sight. Bright. Where was it bright in the rainforest? Where was it bright in the rainforest?
where the guy was sleeping.
Which part of the rainforest? Do you remember what it was called? Because it was dark at the bottom. The top was bright, right? And they call that what?
Sorry.
No, it's called the canopy. Remember? So the canopy's up top. The animals that like the bright sun would stay up there. Okay? And the bottom animals like it dark. Okay, so we could say dark. Small. Spotted. Sparkly. At one point they described, I think, the leaves hanging down as sparkly. Dull. Shaded. Brown. Faded. and dappled.
What is dappled?
Okay, dappled is kind of like spotted. It's not clear. So dappled means kind of like spots or patches. Okay, so you will write your own sentence using a sensory word for a sight. Okay. The next one is smell. What is a word that could help you understand how something is smelling in a story when you're reading? Allie?
Smelling nasty.
Nasty. Good.
Tasty.
It could smell tasty. How about in the story they use the word fragrant? Fragrant is also one of your vocabulary words. So fragrant means it has a pleasant smell. It smells good. Can you have a fresh smell?
Yes.
Yeah. Flowery. Grassy. Can you kind of get a sense of what that smells like when somebody's saying that?
Yes.
Musty. Good. They did use that. Musty is where it's kind of old and dingy and doesn't have a clean smell. Rotten. Smoky. Strong. A strong smell. New. Old. Rosy. And rainy. Okay. Taste. Taste. Well, we just got through eating lunch. So what are some words that you could use in your writing to describe how things taste?
Good.
Okay, we can come up with something better than
Delicious.
that. Delicious. Good. Allie?
Yummy.
Yummy. Okay. Can things taste sweet?
Sour.
Can they taste sour? Can they taste salty?
Disgusting.
Can they taste gross? Can they taste spicy? Juicy. Flavorful. Stale. Does anybody know what that tastes like? You ever had some stale cereal or stale bread?
Once my mom poured us milk. It was
No taste,
It has a
dry,
rush
maybe
in it.
kind of hard and crunchy. Stale chips. They just don't taste fresh, right? They taste a little bit crunchier and harder.
and disgusting.
Okay? Cheesy and tender are the last two. Tender means what?
Tender means like chicken tenders. No, I forgot.
Yeah, but when you're describing food as being tender, like say meat, no, it's the opposite of tough.
Like tender means like hard a little.
Tender means it's not hard. It's very easy.
Light.
It's
Light.
very
Light. No. Like
very easy to cut through if you're talking about meat. So if it's tender, it's not tough. It's the opposite of tough. Not thin. That's no. Tender just means kind of soft and easy to cut through if you're talking about food. Okay? You can just bite right through it. Okay? The last one for sensory language is touch. Okay? So words we would use to describe how things feel. Okay? What do you think, Evangeline? Soft. Allie?
Gooey.
Gooey.
Shoot. Hard.
Rough. Good.
Hard.
Hard. Good. Can things feel furry?
Yes.
Squishy?
Yes.
Prickly?
Yes.
What would prickly be a good word to describe?
Pine cone or cactus.
Pine cone, cactus. Good. Silky. So when you use these words in your writing, it's going to help your reader get a better idea of what you're trying to describe, right? Hot.
Cold.
Hot or warm.
Cold.
Cold. Breezy. Was it breezy this weekend?
Yes.
Yes.
Sticky. Hit rain.
Moist. What does moist mean?
Like it's shiny. Wet.
Kind of wet. Good.
Like hair solution.
Okay. So now you guys have an idea of some words that connect to your 5 senses. So now on the last 4, I want you guys to come up with your own sentence on the right-hand side to go with that sense. And you can use the words that we've written down on the example flap and come up with your own sentence for sensory language.
The first 4.
Okay, we did the first one together. My dog was howling when the moon came out. Okay, so come up with a new sentence for the last 4 and we will share. Okay, so we've written our sentences. We're not going to share those quite yet because we want to go ahead and wrap up this video. The vocabulary words for this week for the Kapok tree is lulled. Lulled means to calm or cause to sleep. The rain gently falling on the roof lulled the family to sleep. Okay, lulled, to calm or cause to sleep. So the rain falling is lulling the family to sleep. Okay, the second one, depend. So everybody say that word.
Depend.
Depend. Depend means to trust or rely on. I depend on my class to get their work done on time so I can grade it. So depend means I rely on you to get your work done. Okay? Wither. Wither means to dry up or wilt. So what can you think of that withers? What will dry up and wilt if it doesn't get enough rain? Allie?
It will get musty.
What will wither? Evangeline?
Flowers.
Flowers. Thank you. So if they don't get water, they're going to dry up and wilt. Wilt and wither mean the same thing. Okay? That means they kind of droop and look like they're about to die. Okay? Canopy. We talked about this word a second ago. Canopy is the uppermost trees, so the top part of the trees in a rainforest. Murmur. Murmur means to make a soft, muffled, continuous sound. Fragrant. We talked about that word too. Fragrant has to do with what? What of the five senses?
Touch.
No. So fragrant, what does it describe? It doesn't describe touch. It describes what, Evangeline? Smell. It's right there in front of you. Having a pleasant smell. Feast. Well, we've probably heard this word before, right? Thanksgiving feast. So feast means to enjoy something very much. Usually when we hear it, it's talking about food, right? The next word is dappled. Okay? So that would be sight. Things can look dappled because that means they have spots or rounded patches. Okay? Wondrous. Wondrous means wonderful or marvelous. So it kind of sounds like wonderful, doesn't it? It has the same 4 letters as wonderful. Okay? Hesitated. It seems like we've seen this word before. What does hesitated mean? Without looking means to what? Aaliyah? To stop. So if you hesitate, that means to stop or pause because of not feeling sure. The girl hesitated when she began to sing because she wasn't sure she could do it. Okay? So those are your vocabulary words for the week. Make sure that you're focusing on the first 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Stopping at fragrant. Those are the ones you will have to fill in the blank. And then the bottom 4 are the ones you have to come up with your own sentence for 2 of them. Okay?